Famed U.S. lawyer Alan Dershowitz comes on the program to defend his former client, Jeffrey Epstein. I'll ask him if billionaires are above the law, even when it comes to pedophilia, and whether allegations that he might be involved are true. I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Alan Dershowitz. It's suspected that there are more than 50 victims of a sex trafficking ring that financier Jeffrey Epstein is accused of setting up. Now, many are wondering how many suspected criminals were a part of it. Prosecutors say Epstein's lavish parties featured underage prostitutes and a guest list that read like a who's who of America's elite, from actors to politicians. A video has even emerged showing Epstein and President Donald Trump together. That's adding more fuel to the fire, all while questions remain about how close Epstein is with former President Bill Clinton. But there's another man at the center of the controversy, Alan Dershowitz. He's the lawyer who gained fame by representing OJ Simpson. He's now defending himself from allegations that he too is a sex offender. Well, in a few moments, Mr. Dershowitz will join me to give his side of the story. But first, let's get some background from Melinda Nusifora.
From Palm Beach playboy to alleged pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein faces the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison. A former maths teacher, Epstein turned his flair for numbers into a money-making empire. In the 90s, the self-made hedge fund manager partied with tycoons such as Donald Trump and counted the likes of former President Bill Clinton and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as his clients. Rumours of illicit and illegal behaviour have dogged Epstein for years. Accusers say a network of rich and powerful friends protected him. But now, after his arrest on multiple sex abuse charges, those friends seem few and far between.
I was not a fan of his, that I can tell you. I was not a fan of his.
Epstein's alleged crimes date back as far as 2002, prompting many to ask why it's taken so long for the accusations to be revisited. Epstein was arrested last week. He's been charged with one count of sex trafficking minors and another of conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking.
Beginning in at least 2002 and continuing until 2005, Epstein is alleged to have abused dozens of victims by causing them to engage in sex acts with him at his mansion in New York and at his estate in Palm Beach, Florida.
The girls were recruited in a variety of ways, usually by employees of Epstein and sometimes by fellow victims. The victims typically received hundreds of dollars in cash. The estimated dozens of victims were as young as 14 years old at time of recruitment.
The case has attracted so much attention because this isn't the first time the millionaire has faced such accusations. Back in 2008, he pleaded guilty to paying a teenage girl for sex. The plea deal meant he didn't have to stand trial, and his 13-month sentence is now being criticised as grossly inadequate.
My name is Courtney Wild, and I was sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein as a child. In 2008, the U.S. Attorney in Florida gave him a free pass on abusing me and many other victims.
His lawyer at the time, Alexander Acosta, went on to become Donald Trump's Labour Secretary. Acosta resigned this week amid immense media scrutiny.
He made a deal that people were happy with, and then 12 years later, they're not happy with it. You'll have to figure all of that out. But the fact is, he has been a fantastic Secretary of Labor.
Inside his New York mansion, Epstein surrounded himself with high flyers. So, if he goes down, who else could go down with him?
These were girls who were procured, transported across state lines, kept under supervision. Girls as young as 14, as you just heard, who were way below the age of consent. They were lent out to people who Jeffrey Epstein wanted to have relationships with, gain favors from. This was as commercial a sex trafficking operation as you can imagine.
The US Public Corruption Unit is assisting with the investigation, suggesting at least one former or current public official may be involved.
Everyone deserves to be treated equally, no matter who you are or how much money you have. You do not have the right to abuse anyone.
Melinda Nusafora, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now is Alan Dershowitz. He's a professor emeritus at Harvard Law School. He also defended Jeffrey Epstein in a 2008 sex abuse case, and is also accused by one of the alleged victims of participating in Epstein's trafficking ring. Good to have you on the program, Professor Dershowitz. It was a win for you 11 years ago, I'd imagine. But
well,
now
with
all the new allegations and charges, do you regret getting Epstein a sweet deal back then?
Of course not. Any good criminal defense lawyer will try to get the best possible deal he can. Look, I regret getting involved in the case at all because the result has been a totally false and perjurious allegation by a woman I never even met. And I have travel records that prove that she committed perjury, that I couldn't possibly have been with her on the desert island and on the ranch and on the plains and other places. I proved it conclusively, and I got the judge to strike it, and the lawyers who filed it to withdraw it, and the former head of the FBI to prove conclusively she was lying. She also lied about Bill Clinton and Al Gore being on Jeffrey Epstein's island. Secret Service records show that she is a perjurer and a serial liar. So I don't think anybody's taking seriously the charges against me. I've had sex with only one woman during this entire relevant period of time, my wife, and I can prove that. So I think I regret having gotten involved in the case only because my reputation has been sullied by these false charges, which I've now disproved, but I don't regret at all having gotten a good deal for Jeffrey Epstein. I would do that for any client. A lawyer can't throw the case, can't refuse to get a good deal, can't get a less good deal than the deal he got. The job of the lawyer is to zealously defend and get the best result he can.
Paul Castle, Virginia Roberts' lawyer, said, quote, "When all the records come out, it will show that Epstein and Maxwell were trafficking girls to the benefit of his friends, including Mr. Dershowitz." She's still saying it now, her lawyer's still saying it now, and she swears under oath that you raped her 6 times. This is the same girl who said Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, had raped her. She'd had sex against her will with him when she was 16 years old. Why would she lie about you guys?
Well, first of all, she lied for money. She was hoping to get $1 billion from Leslie Wexner, the owner of Victoria's Secret. She lied, she committed perjury. I was never in any of those locations. I have her own lawyer on tape admitting that she was wrong, simply wrong, and that it was impossible for me to have been in those places. Neither she nor her lawyer have ever accused me in person. If you called them and try to get them on the show, they would refuse to appear. They only accuse me in court papers, which make it impossible for me to sue them for deposition. They hide behind the litigation privilege. But I challenge Paul Casale to repeat his statement to you or to repeat it to any media, and then I will sue him for defamation. It's just a totally false story, done for money. I can prove it. It was part of an extortion plot, part of an attempt to get $1 billion from Leslie Wexner, and it failed because I exposed it, and that's why they're so angry at me, because I denied them their $1 billion payday. This is a woman who has lied repeatedly. Then there's another woman who claims she has sex tapes of Hillary Clinton and of Donald Trump and of Richard Branson and of Bill Clinton.
Okay,
these are women who
not
lie for a living.
Certainly. We're focusing on this particular case here, right? Now, on the record, you said you got a massage. So help me understand the circumstances within which you'd get to Epstein's house and you'd get a massage.
My wife had a massage. My daughter had a massage. Hundreds of people had massages at Jeffrey Epstein's house. He had professional massage therapists. The woman who gave me a massage was in her 50s. I kept my shorts on. It was a particularly painful massage. She tried to put her knees on my shoulders. There was absolutely nothing sexual about it. I would say probably 100 people have had legitimate massages in Epstein's house, including many Harvard professors, many politicians, many others. There's an affidavit by his houseman indicating that virtually everybody who came to the house was offered a massage. I was there with my wife, my daughter, my grandchildren. We were there as social guests, and part of the social guests was to have a massage. This is well before there were any allegations of anything improper, so there's nothing problematic about getting
You mentioned
a massage.
there were Harvard professors,
nothing
there were
problematic
politicians.
about getting
So,
a therapeutic massage.
I mean, you just mentioned the important
That's right.
people there, right? And that's one of the reasons why people think Epstein got away with it for so long. When we look at the testimony of the girls, so you've called Virginia Roberts Giuffre a liar. We have Jenna Lisa Jones as
totally
well,
false.
Courtney Wilde as well, right?
A serial liar and a perjurer.
Okay, so they all say that they were lured into Epstein's care under false pretenses as massage therapists when they were teenagers. And that, yes, they gave massages, but they also gave many other services that they were forced into doing. So there's a massage connection to Epstein.
That's all possible. That's all possible. No, there's no massage connection. There are many, many people who had legitimate massages, including former prime ministers of countries, former leading members of Congress. None of this had any impact on the deal he got. He got the deal because the case against him at that time wasn't strong. Let me be very, very, very clear. I never had any sexual contact with anyone who had any relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. From the day I met Jeffrey Epstein till today, I have had sex with one woman, namely my wife. I have stated that under oath, and I've proved it. Why are you believing these women who have falsely accused Al Gore, falsely accused Tipper Gore, falsely accused President Clinton, falsely accused the former majority leader of the United States Senate, falsely accused the former prime minister of a country? Why do you believe these women who have made these false accusations for money? It really shows the bias of the media and the bias of the Me Too movement, that even if you disprove categorically, even if the former head of the FBI does a thorough investigation and disproves it, even if the judge throws it out, even if the lawyers withdrew the charges, even if her own lawyer says
one of the reasons we look at it, right now is because Epstein faces federal charges of sex trafficking and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking, charged with running a sex trafficking operation and sexually abusing dozens of...
This is guilt by association.
This is, well, it's connected, is it not?
You're speaking. I'm not connected to it. I was his lawyer. It's McCarthyism to accuse his lawyer of something like that. Look, you represent Turkish television, right?
I represent the newsmakers.
Is this Turk?
Yeah, this is TRT World.
Is that a Turkish television program?
It's TRT World. It's taxpayer funded.
Is that Turkish?
That's right. That's right.
From Turkey. Okay. Look, I don't ever want to see the United States adopt the Turkish legal system, where people are presumed guilty, where judges are arrested, where the head of Turkey
so let's have a discussion about the Turkish legal system.
I don't want to ever see America subjected to the Turkish system.
Okay.
No, what I'm talking about, you making these accusations,
I'm not making any accusations.
Have
I made any
sounds like it comes from Erdogan.
I've not made any accusations against you, and I don't represent
Yes, you said, why would they lie? Why would they lie? Let me tell you why they would lie.
Can we bring this back to the facts?
If you ever said anything, if you ever said anything about Erdogan, you'd be arrested. Yeah,
Professor Dershowitz, can we bring this back to the facts? Great. Okay, so you mentioned that there were several high-profile people, politicians, celebrities, Harvard professors, heads of state, ministers, who also got these massages that had nothing nefarious about them. Are you willing to name some names?
These massages. You see, that's your bias. That's your bias. These massages.
Are you willing to name names?
You associate them with the women who gave improper massages.
You're getting terribly defensive here, and I'm asking you if there are other people who can also share the same thing.
You're getting terribly accusatory. Yes. Yes, I can tell you that you can call Leslie Wexner, who was accused. He's the head of... Just let me finish, please. He was accused of having sex 7 times on 7 occasions. You can call Leslie Wexner. And then in my court papers, I name all the names. Unfortunately, they've been sealed. We're trying to get them unsealed. I have emails from my accuser admitting that she didn't have sex with me. I have a manuscript of a book she wrote admitting she didn't have sex with me. The evidence is overwhelming, and you are being utterly biased and outrageous in making a suggestion that somehow, because I admit it, I don't need an opportunity to defend myself. I haven't been accused of anything by any government authority or by anyone other than women with records of serial lying from the beginning to end. Now I'm being accused by you, who comes from a country without a legal system that's worthy of being called a legal system. I'm happy to leave my fate to the American legal system. Okay. That's why I have filed lawsuits. I have filed bar complaints. I have asked for an FBI investigation of me. I don't have to defend myself against anything.
I guess one of the things that we want to ask,
nothing wrong.
Okay,
nothing.
So in the aftermath of this, after Epstein's recent
I hope you
arrest,
will run this interview. I hope you will run this interview. I hope
it's going to run in totality. It's going to run in
totality.
Without it will
editing,
run completely
so that all
unedited.
my points of view.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I appreciate that.
So as we continue, a lot of people feel in the aftermath of Epstein's arrest, when they look at all the guest lists of his parties, they see the recent images that came out of him and President Trump partying in Mar-a-Lago in 1992. They look at him rubbing shoulders, excuse the pun, terrible choice of words, with very important people. And there's a feeling that perhaps one of the reasons why Epstein didn't face full justice back in 2008 was because he probably has dirt on powerful people. Address that for me.
That's absurd. Why would the legal system not go after him just because he had dirt on other people? It's going after him now. Let him tell the dirt. I hope he expresses his views about everybody. I hope he has videotapes of everybody, because it would show I was never in his house except in the public areas with other people present. I hope he tells everything about everybody. That's why I've sought to unseal everything. I don't want anything sealed. I don't want any secrets, because I have nothing to hide. I have never refused to answer any questions. If other people have things to hide, that's their concern, but I have absolutely nothing to hide. I want everything to come out.
So when we look at the man's personality and we look at his the general facts surrounding the man now, especially with the raid, they found he had an expired foreign passport, he had residency in Saudi Arabia, and he's not known to ever have lived in Saudi Arabia. His, the amount of money in his bank account, or his assets, seemed to be more than $500 million. The man had a shadiness to him.
What's your point?
Okay. So with all of that in mind, and they feel that...
Not that we knew about it, not that we knew about... No.
You didn't know this in 2008?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so with all of this in mind, people are asking, who is this guy? What does he have? Who is he?
Let me finish my point.
Why is he seemingly so powerful?
He's not. He's in jail and may spend the rest of his life in jail. He's not powerful at all. In 2007, 2008, let me tell you what I knew about him. I was introduced to him by the Lady Rothschild and her husband, Evelyn Rothschild. I was then flown to a birthday party of Leslie Wexner, at which Shimon Peres and John Glenn attended. I then went to seminars with the president of Harvard and the provost of Harvard, and George Church, the person who uncoded the genome, and some of the most distinguished professors in the United States, the man who invented artificial intelligence, were all present. All we knew is that this was a serious intellectual who was contributing $30 million to Harvard. Nobody knew anything about his private life, about his sex life. Nobody knew anything about his finances or about his Saudi Arabian passport. That's all with the benefit of hindsight. We all have to be judged by what we knew at the time, and all of us terminated our relationships with him, our private relationships with him, once he was accused. But before he was accused, nobody had any idea that there were any such accusations being leveled against him. As far as we knew, I met him in the presence of the most distinguished academics in the world. That's what we knew at the time, and that's the basis on which we should be judged.
And it's worth mentioning as well that found in his safe was child porn, diamonds, cash, and all other things during the raid.
What does that have to do with any of us? We didn't know any of that. We didn't.
Well, this is Epstein, right? We're talking about Epstein right now, and a man you defended,
I mean,
and a man
you don't think? Yeah. Well, let me ask you.
Okay.
I defended legally.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. What would happen if it was discovered that some of your friends had child pornography in their vaults? Would you feel that you were guilty of anything? If you didn't know about the child pornography, you didn't know about any of those things, would you feel you had done something wrong by having a relationship? I mean, your relationship with me is a relationship between an interviewer and an interviewee. Sure. My relationship with Epstein was a relationship between a lawyer and a client.
Of course.
I'm not
and the charges were related to sex trafficking, so child pornography, sex trafficking of minors, so child pornography does have a relevance when it comes to that, even though it's after the fact. I'm going to let that go for a second now, and I want to...
Relevance to him, not a relevance to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to let that go for the second.
Him, not to me.
I want to talk about
You're not
Mike
going to get away with just making these fake accusations.
I want to talk about Mike Fiston.
To who?
And Mike Fiston. I'll tell you who he is. He's a police detective.
Who?
In Miami. Mike Fiston. I'm telling you who he is.
Never heard of him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, police detective working on the case in 2007, 2008. Now, he said on the record that the U.S. Attorney Acosta was sending the federal indictment to you guys, to Epstein's rockstar lawyer team, to have a look at before the indictment.
That always happens. That happens in every case.
Now he felt that this showed that there was some sort of
in every case.
deference to your power over his. Acosta's resigned recently. Why would people think that Acosta?
Okay. That's his problem.
Okay. Why would people think that Acosta was deferring to your power in this? Okay, go ahead.
Well, he wasn't. It was an arm's length negotiation. I've been in 250 cases. I'm probably among the most experienced criminal lawyers in American history. I have the best won and lost record of any lawyer in American history on murder and homicide related cases. I've done so many of these cases. In every case that I've negotiated, I've been shown a draft of the indictment. That happens in every single case. That's part of the negotiation. The prosecutor says, here's the draft of the indictment. We show the prosecutor, well, here's the draft of our defense. Let's compare how strong your indictment is with how strong our defense is. Then let's make a deal that reflects the comparative strength of both sides. That's exactly what happened here.
Something that I'd love for you to address and put to bed is that Acosta was reportedly told that Epstein belonged to intelligence, whatever that might mean. Do you suspect that he belonged to intelligence?
Totally false. No, I know he didn't belong to any intelligence. It's a totally false story. It was alleged that he was an agent of Mossad. That's just not true. He was an agent of any intelligence agency. If he was, he probably wouldn't have been arrested today, or he would have been notified to stay in Paris and not get on his airplane. It is ridiculous to believe that he got the good deal because he was an intelligence officer, because he testified against Bear Stearns. All of these fantasies are out there. The reason he got the deal he got, because the government couldn't prove that he ever transported an underage girl in interstate commerce. People may not understand this in Turkey, but there are two systems in the United States, the state system and the federal system. What he did was state crime. To prove a federal crime, you have to prove interstate transportation of an underage girl or the use of interstate means to facilitate sex with an underage girl. Prosecutors couldn't do that, and that's why they were prepared to make a deal, sending him to prison, making him pay all these women, having him register as a sex offender, because that's the best they could do. That's what the nature of negotiations are, always.
Professor Dershowitz, you're following the charges.
Let me be very clear too that I'm not Epstein's lawyer now. I'm not Epstein's lawyer now. I've had no contact with him for years.
Okay.
No, I haven't seen him for years, and I have only had contact with him through his lawyers in the last months. Yeah.
You're following the case closely based on the available evidence, based on the charges, based on the fact that this has been re-upped all these years later after you were deeply involved and now you're not. You're looking at this objectively. Extricate yourself out of it now. If I had to call you on and analyze it legally, is Epstein going to jail for the rest of his life?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the government's evidence is. I don't know what the defense evidence is. We have a legal system in which the burden of proof is on the government to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, not only do they have to prove that he had sex with underage girls, They have to prove that there was a nexus with interstate commerce, that he either transported some of these young women in interstate commerce or used a phone or wires. I don't know what the evidence is. He may or may not end up being found guilty. He may or may not end up being denied bail. And that's up to the courts. And I am not an objective observer because I was one of his lawyers, and therefore I can't comment on his current guilt or innocence. I may have my own views, but I'm not permitted to express them. That's what the legal system in the United States requires.
Alan Dershowitz, hope you'll come back on the program for a chat sometime soon. Well, after hearing from Alan Dershowitz, let's get some reaction. In New York is Yasmin Hassan, the Global Executive Director of Equality Now, a group campaigning to end sex trafficking. In San Francisco, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman, and in Philadelphia, the co-founder of the U.S. Tea Party movement, Michael Johns. Good to have you all on the program. Yasmin Hassan, you heard my interview and exchange with Professor Dershowitz. Your immediate thoughts?
He's saying that the U.S. justice system works. The U.S. justice system does not work for women and girls, as we are seeing primarily in this Me Too era. We have lots and lots of cases where defendants have gotten off because they were rich and powerful. And for those defendants who are not rich and powerful, we see also that there is, for women and girls who are victims of sexual violence, who are victims of sex trafficking, justice is very hard. We have been working for years to try to fix the sexual violence laws, to fix the sex trafficking laws, and yet in implementation, we fall short. Part of it is because prosecutors, like in the Acosta, Alexander Acosta in that case, policemen, and then the defense lawyers. It's a huge barrier. So I don't think the justice system works. I want to say that the United States puts itself as a leader on ending sex trafficking. We have the United States Trafficking in Persons Office, and they hold all states around the world accountable, and they rate them. But the U.S. itself, in this particular case, has shown how far it falls short on defending girls. And I want to say the trafficking laws are meant to protect the most vulnerable. Right. The justice system is meant to serve the most vulnerable, and this case is a travesty of justice. It's gone on for years, and I'm glad that things are coming to a head right now. But who we are not speaking about are the 80-plus girls who are now women who have come forward and accused Epstein. And I am actually shocked by Alan Dershowitz saying, he said, why believe the women? They're all in it for the money. And we are seeing this thing comes up again. It came up against the Dominique Strauss case. It's coming up in the Weinstein case. It comes up in every case. And I'll tell you what, I believe the women. That is my job to make sure the system works for women.
So, Harry Litman, as a former U.S. Deputy Attorney, were you working in a system that was protecting those with status and money, no matter how egregious the crime?
If you mean, is there sort of a two tiers for wealthy people? It's U.S. is a capitalist system. Money matters. And in this case, I think part of the miscarriage of justice that occurred could be traced to money. But judges swear to do fair justice for rich or for poor. Prosecutors do as well. We commit a lot of resources to it, and the legion of rich defendants who are in jail today is quite long. I think Yasmin is right that the system is sort of catching up to some of the special problems that are presented by women and girl victims. It hasn't done right by them to date. Of course, it does have constitutional obligations, right? The accused have to be able to face their accuser, to make every argument they can. But the system has caught up, I think, quite a bit in the many years since Epstein got the sweetheart deal in Miami. And I think to portray it as endemic is probably overstated.
Okay. Michael Johns, has Harry Litman accurately described the current state of criminal justice through the prism of this Epstein case and how it's evolved?
I don't think so, in the sense that there was a lot of legitimate scrutiny of the plea agreement that Epstein made in South Florida. He's now in jail, facing potential life in prison. Every defendant in this country is afforded the presumption of innocence. The presumption of innocence is a crucial foundation and bedrock of the American jurisprudence system. We can't abandon that, though the allegations that are made against the wealthy and powerful always have to be taken as seriously as any others. And we have a system that ultimately, I think, is about as perfect as you can get it, but it's increasingly being analyzed and improved. But it is based on the rule of law, on a constitution that affords the presumption of innocence, but also affords due process and prosecution for criminal activity.
Yasmin, are you convinced by any of that?
No, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm hearing you. You are two men talking about what a system that has failed women and girls. By the way, in the United
it's
States,
not your role to convict these people. You haven't.
No, it's
not your role to
and I'm
convict
not
these
arguing
people.
this, but I will tell you
Your
another
advocacy
case
role is
that
appreciated.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we have been involved in cases very recently, recently meaning 5 years ago, we were involved in a case of a 13-year-old girl in D.C. who was sex trafficked by white-collar lawyers from a law firm. She was pimped out and sex videos were made of her. And Maryland let the defendants off with a slap on the wrist. When we went to federal prosecutors to try to bring a case in under the U.S. federal anti-trafficking law, which we had worked on, we were told, and I believe this guy, he said, we will bring this case. It's a strong case. But he said the victim will be destroyed in the process. She put herself online. At that time, it was MySpace. She is going to be the way that the defendants, high-class lawyers are going to cross-examine her, the way that this is going to go on for 5-6 years when she will go from 13 to 18 and she'll spend all her formative years basically defending herself against onslaught. And it's better for her to get counseling and move off. And that's what the victim and her mother decided to do. So I'm saying, yes, there's a presumption of innocence, but when the facts are so clear that there is no innocence, you allow defendants who are wealthy to browbeat these victims. And these are the most vulnerable people in society. That girl's life is ruined. A lot of girls, you have to look at what the trauma of rape and sex trafficking does to these people. And I'm sorry, the justice system does not work.
Okay, so Michael, this idea that if you have money and wealth and a good legal team, you can browbeat, as Yasmin said, or gaslight even all the accusers until you destroy them even before you have a verdict. Is that accurate and fair?
Well, it's not permissible, really, under legal procedure in this country, nor are our bail processes accommodating in these cases. I think that's one thing that we do need to look at. You know, really the two big areas that are very difficult to navigate are bail and representation. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein enjoyed some of the most premier criminal defense attorneys, one of whom you had on at the beginning of the show. It's very difficult to say that he was not a beneficiary of that incredibly pricey and competent representation. Now, every defendant in the U.S. is afforded representation. We afford attorneys to defendants who cannot afford them. But evening out these disparities is an ongoing debate. It's a legitimate debate, and it's the way a democracy should function, always ensuring that justice comes first and foremost. Juvenile justice is also particularly sensitive. There are accommodations that are made for juvenile accusers and for juvenile defendants in the U.S. Justice system. And to be sure, sex trafficking is a very serious issue in the United States and around the world. It's one of the reasons many of us, me included, have been supporting President Trump's effort to secure the border through which many of those who've been victimized by this have been trafficked and transported.
Harry Litman, the fact that the U.S. attorney, or the former U.S. attorney Acosta, who was recently Labor Secretary, resigned, and there's new scrutiny looking back at the instances of the sweetheart deal, as you guys call it, 11, 12 years ago. The fact that all of this is going on, does that mean that anything's going to change via this Epstein case?
I've been inside prosecutors' offices. I have to take issue with Yasmin. They're taken extremely seriously, as they were, this very one, in the Southern District of New York, where the rich, important Mr. Epstein probably is, looking at a life sentence. It's also really important to distinguish between the law and legal procedure. Of course, as your other guest says, you have a right to confront accusers, and that's difficult for accusers. But the Congress actually has put into place some special protections for accusers when they're young, when they are when the victims or putative victims of sex crimes. That helps a lot, but you have a constitutional line that you can't cross, saying even the most vile of defendants can, in fact, confront the accuser. But yeah, I think there's a lot of awareness. It's both social and, the Me Too movement has done a lot for the unfairness of kind of putting the victim on trial, and there are different jurisdictions that in fact give special solicitude for, especially as it should, minors who have been victimized by sex traffickers.
Yasmin, as we circle this back to the issue of wealth and the quality of legal representation that you can get, just help me understand the difference. And I think we got a little bit of insight into this now when I was speaking to Professor Dershowitz, right? 5 minutes into the interview, suddenly I'm on the defensive, having to talk about the Turkish legal system, right? I mean, he's very skilled and very smart, right?
No,
this is the man who he got off OJ Simpson, right? Now you have Professor Dershowitz on the one hand, who's representing the accused, and the accuser is somebody who perhaps doesn't get the kind of high caliber lawyer that they probably should deserve. How much of a difference does that make?
It makes a whole vast difference. I mean, if you look at the recent, the Central Park 5, that case that has come back up, and Ava DuVernay made an amazing series that's been showing on Netflix, it just shows what representation does to, there were 14-year-old boys, one was 16, and they were convicted for a rape they did not commit because they had horrible legal representation. Right? So this is the American justice system. It is based on Alan Dershowitz was my criminal law professor. Alex Acosta was my class fellow. We were in the same law school class. He was our professor. So there is a huge male-dominated patriarchal way in which we look at the justice system. I went to law school not to be able to play a game of who has the most strategy and who is going to win. I really went there to be able to do good and have a system that works for everybody. And that is not the system that we have. I mean, I have to disagree with the other two people. We try really hard, and it's as good as we have, but there is a lot of room for improvement. And people of color in this country who are incarcerated at very, very high rates, and women and girls and poor people have the short shrift here. When we take on cases, we make sure that we get the top law firms lawyers to argue those cases, because otherwise we know we are not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, certainly. I've got to move on, Yasmin, but I really appreciate you all joining us on the program. Yasmin Hassan, Michael Johns, and Harry Littman, thanks again. The U.S. territory of Puerto Rico is bankrupt. It's the largest bankruptcy reported by any municipality in American history. And while the government there is trying to dig itself out of a $124 billion hole, this is the scene in the capital, San Juan. Police are firing tear gas at protesters who are demanding the ousting of the territory's leader, Governor Ricardo Rosselló. He's embroiled in a massive corruption scandal. It centers around his participation in a Telegram group that includes obscene, sexist, and homophobic remarks about women, political opponents, and journalists. Well, joining me now in San Juan is John Mudd, an attorney specializing in bankruptcy and constitutional law. He's also among those targeted in Governor Rosselló's private group chat. Also in San Juan is Jorge Rodriguez, who's the CEO of an international engineering firm based in Puerto Rico. And Reverend Roberto Luis Lugo is the Director for Intervention and Program Development at the Community Umbrella Agency in Philadelphia. Good to have you all on the program. Jorge, let's start with you. Do you think that this is something that Governor Rosselló cannot survive?
Yeah, I don't think he will survive this one. First of all, there is a very strong rumors, and it has actually been informed by the FBI director based in Puerto Rico that there will be more arrests regarding the corruption, and they will be soon. So if that happens, then that's the last straw. But after yesterday's march, over 100,000 people, probably the largest march ever in Puerto Rico, I don't think he will ever be able to recover from that.
Okay, so we're hearing there will be more arrests. So Julia Kelleher was the former education secretary. She was arrested and accused of steering millions in improper contracts to politically connected contractors worth about $16 million. John Mudd, has the Telegram group been the straw that broke the camel's back? There were all these issues, and suddenly the people became galvanized after just seeing, I guess, power, especially the governor and his inner circle, just being flippant and indifferent and elitist and mean.
I think that's a good way of summarizing it. It is a series of acts. First, we had the corruption arrests of Julia Gallagher, who was very intimate with the governor in terms of her desire of her actions. And then you had the chat in which everybody was insulted, including myself, words that normally you don't say in polite company. And it's going to get worse because, as the previous panelist said, there will probably be arrests. And if Elias Sanchez, who was the campaign manager for the governor, is arrested, it will be unavoidably, he will have to resign. Either he will resign or he will be impeached, as the Constitution provides.
Right. John, why were they unhappy with you? What did you do to upset them?
Well, actually, it's funny because I've known them. I was in radio show panels with the governor and some of these people, and I was very supportive of the campaign. But as his actions became so bad and such bad government, I started criticizing, and they didn't like it.
Right. Roberto Luis Lugo, has the public adequately and accurately responded to the texts or the leaked Telegram chats, or maybe have they overreacted a bit?
Well, I believe that those chats and texts just show behavior that tell you that the people who behind all that are not able to govern, they're not able to understand how government works, and they just trying to manipulate, trying to make people believe what they are not. And people are tired of that kind of behavior from the politicians. And that's apparently that shot went too high that people can deal with that anymore. And that's why they're responding the way they're responding. People are tired of being taken as a stupid people when they are not. And those who are protesting there are the same people from their own party that are tired of the same bad politics, bad behavior, and using the service of the government to make them rich and have their own privileges. While our people are dying, I was at work, our people are leaving the island, while them are enriching their lives with the money of their own people.
Jorge, right, certainly. Let me go to Jorge for a second. Jorge, if this is a peek inside the world of the leadership and what they think of the people, then it suggests that this is not an easy fix. Okay, so what if he resigns? If the entire political class thinks of the people like this and has such a low opinion of the people, maybe his replacement won't be any better.
Well, just a very good point. We have to understand that there is rule of law as part of governing a society, and we need to respect that, right? So what should have happened a long time ago was for the House of Representatives to start a process that constitutionally enabled them to resign the governor, right? To get him out. Certainly, there is always the criminal element or the illegal behavior, and there is the moral compass as a leader, the values and principles that you should use as your moral compass. The beauty of this protest, which I find I participated, by the way, the protest during the day was beautiful, was all sorts of people in there, and it was 100,000 people without a doubt or more. The beauty is that it's against values and principles as your moral compass. Now, we have not had the House of Representatives start anything. They're just basically saying, since they're from the same party, to the governor that they're giving him some room. I believe that those are the things that drive the people to be stringent, said that the rule of law that provides the society with a tool to actually remove someone with this behavior is not being employed. So to me, through that process is where us as people are represented, and those people that have been elected democratically should be the ones selecting who is going to replace him. The moment he says, I'm not going down, then this is a dictatorship. And that's a very delicate dance there, because he's really acting as a dictatorship, and the tools we have within the Constitution are not being employed. So this is like a time bomb,
Right.
in a way.
In many ways, very similar to what we saw in Hong Kong recently, with such a small population, seeing so many people out onto the streets. Clearly, it shows, John Mudd, that a lot of people are upset. A lot of people agree that something needs to change. Have we seen any evidence of contrition, any evidence of, okay, I'm going to listen to you and try and sort myself out?
Not at all. This is not a dictatorship. The governor was elected democratically. The process is being ongoing. What will happen is, once there are further arrests, then the political group in the House will have to impeach him, or actually make the accusation, which is what impeachment means. You have to remember that, different from the U.S. Constitution, Puerto Rico Constitution requires 2/3 of legislatures in the House to make the impeachment. And that's not as simple as it seems, because also the Constitution requires that there be accusations of a crime, a felony, or a misdemeanor, which is implies deprivation. And I think in the chat we can see them, but they're not that clear cut. And then you go to the Senate and you have to impeach him by 3/4 of non-impeachment. Remove him with 3/4 of the senators. Again, that's not as simple as it seems.
Will he get impeached, Roberto?
I don't think so. But the House or the Senate, they don't have the votes to do that at this moment. But what is true is, what is real, that his re-election is completely out of question. He will not be re-elected, and if he doesn't resign, will be a big damage for the political party. People are taking that into account, and in few months ahead, you will see the reaction on how people vote in Puerto Rico. And that's a clear message not only for the Republican Party in Puerto Rico, or the PNP Party in Puerto Rico, but also the PPD Party also may have the same, to keep aware of the same situation. People are tired of electing the same people, and they do the same things, and worse and worse and worse.
Jorge, at the very least,
Yes.
would you be satisfied with the fact that he won't be re-elected?
This is the point. The point is that the ends never justifies the means. You cannot justify the circumstances or what you've done because of what may happen. Doing the right thing, it has to be your north. And if you're a leader, even more. So obviously, he will never even get reelected again. But this goes beyond that. This goes about the fact that you have a leader of a society that has made homophobic, sexist, vulgar, the lowest of the behavior of a human being, forget a governor, has been showcased by the person governing a society. That is just despicable. This is something that will, it just goes beyond anything we can even talk about. You cannot really even mention what they said on the chat. They even made fun of the death of the dead people on the Hurricane Maria. So the governor, fun. This is real. This is there. So to me, it's about him stepping down gracefully and letting a society move forward. And if not, immediately to have the arm through government and rule of law for society to have him be impeached.
Yeah. So, John Mudd, looking into some of the things that were said, as was mentioned by Jorge, the chief financial officers making jokes about the dead bodies that piled up after Hurricane Maria, homophobic jokes directed at Ricky Martin and others, so much so that people started to call this Telegram leak Ricky Leaks. Ricky Martin's joined the protests, Lin-Manuel Miranda and others. How important has it been, John, that so many high-profile figures joined the protests and amplified this protest?
I think that them being there makes more people go to the protest, and that's good. However, Ricky Martin, Calle 13, and a couple of others, Lin-Manuel, they don't live in Puerto Rico. We who live here have to deal with it. And it's nice that they were there, but we who live here have to deal with it. We have to vote. We have to keep the pressure. Not, celebrities doing all this, because they go home and they don't have to deal with the deterioration of everything as we see here. As I'm very fond of saying, nothing works in Puerto Rico because everything is centered on the government. And that's another issue, has to do with a worldview, etc. But the government doesn't exist right now. They're all like waiting for something to happen.
Okay, Roberto, Jorge, and John, it's been a pleasure having you all on the Newsmakers. I've got to move on, but thank you for joining us. Many celebrated it, others wished they'd done it, while some denied it ever happened. But no matter how you look at it, the 1969 moon landing remains one of the most incredible events humanity has ever witnessed. Here's the story of Apollo 11 in retrospect.
Man is not made to go about being safe and comfortable. He is constantly being driven to do unreasonable things. Some force impels him, and go he must.
15 seconds, guidance internal, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, ignition sequence start, engines on, 5, 4, 3, 1, all engines running, launch commit, liftoff, we have liftoff.
Roger, we're seeing it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, geez, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent?
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
Up now.
The important achievement of Apollo was a demonstration that humanity is not forever chained to this planet, and our visions go rather further than that, and our opportunities are unlimited.
That's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.